Left, we've got Steve Kundich, Vice President of Developmental Services at Digital Realty, and Mark Thompson, National Advanced Technology Market Leader of DPR Construction. You may know Steve is responsible for driving continuous improvement, innovation, and collaboration into Digital's design and delivery process, drawing on VDC, IPD, Integrated Project Delivery, and design and lean principles. What you may not know is he has an affinity for classic roadsters and is a proud owner of a 1979 MGB. Mark leads the National Advanced Technology Group for DPR Construction, one of the country's top technical builders, the third largest data center and telecommunications contractor in the nation. He's also a former rugby player for the Santa Barbara Grunions. The topic of this next presentation is scalable, containerized, and prefabricated modular component solutions. Gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jack.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks for having us here today. I'm Mark Thompson, and I started working with Steve Kundich in 1998. We've been doing design build work together in some way, shape, or form for almost 15 years now. We started off in the microelectronics industry in the Bay Area, and in 2005, Steve started with Digital Realty. 2004, we started building data centers in California and Santa Clara. And since that time, we've done projects in Arizona, Texas,
Virginia,
Georgia, New Jersey. I think I got them all.
Yeah, that's good range. I know Mark and I, like you said, we kind of go way back, and started out with him when he was an MEP coordinator, and we were kind of slogging through semiconductor and other projects, and then moving into the data center builds. It's been a good experience with a lot of the folks at DPR and sort of their thinking on how they approach the design, procurement, and delivery of data centers and some of the other types of innovations that we can bring to the build. So it'll be good to talk about modular today and cover off on a few things that haven't changed and how it can affect our thinking in applying these technologies to data center projects.
So it's a very exciting time right now in design and construction. There are advances in building information modeling and integrated project delivery and BIM.
A lot of lean thinking making its way into the design, procurement, and delivery, so great tools.
The modular deployments are an offshoot of the BIM and the IPD, where we're getting the engineering folks involved early with fabricators and the supply chain, and the vendors that are actually installing the work, the electrical and mechanical and general contractors as well. We're going to hit on modular today, and basically we're going to be talking about the higher stakes that are going to be that are hitting all of the industry right now with modular, with all these great ways that we're delivering construction.
Yeah, and I think, it's like Jason was talking about a bit too, a lot of owners and folks out there are looking for ways to reduce cost, improve efficiency, and come up with a better way of designing, delivering, and deploying data centers. And I think that's, part of those higher stakes. People are seeing these large costs and challenging it and saying there's got to be better ways to do it. So with that.
Yeah. So there's more knowledge out there. You still need vendors, though, with the core competency around the mission-critical design and construction.
Yeah, and I think that's a real important takeaway for a lot of people to realize. I mean, it's challenging with all the different types of product offerings and different approaches. I think it's good to kind of drill down into what is the structure of the team, what are their core competencies, and how is that going to also contribute to the success of the project.
And we're going to hit on today, containers. As we're talking about modular, it's really as sort of Digital's model, which is the building blocks, I think kind of the hybrid that Jason had talked about.
Yeah.
Containers, power skids, cooling skids. We're going to kind of hit, and then fully modular data centers. So everything that we're talking about sort of applies to kind of all of that stew, as Steve calls it.
Yeah. So current status of modular marketing, there's just a lot of different messagings out there, and I think, it kind of can sum it up as mine goes to 11, right? And probably the better way now, I was thinking about Spinal Tap, if you guys are familiar with that, right? Instead of 10, mine goes to 11. Really, for us in the industry right now, it's more, my PUE. 1.01, or I'm waiting for the next one to be announced, that's 0.995.
Right, right. 5-minute abs.
Yeah, 5-minute abs,
right.
same thing. So
Some of the points that we're going to drive home today is modular is a tool, and it's sort of an arrow in the quiver for design and construction, delivering data centers, but it's not magic, and there's still a lot of core competencies that we're going to be talking about that your team still need to have to be able to deliver modular data centers.
yeah, it's definitely part of the puzzle, and I think as we run through some of these items around speed, cost, reliability, efficiency, it certainly has a place in that, but there, as we all know, there's a lot of architects and engineers in the room, that there's definitely other considerations that we should always keep in mind.
So some of the myths and truths, and one of them is that modular is always cheaper, and I think some things that we want to talk about here, or this is the Yahoo compute coop in upstate New York. And I would argue that this pre-manufactured metal building here at $50 a square foot for the structure is a pretty efficient way to build your white space versus 12 by 50 modules at 600 square foot a clip that are $150 a square foot. So these are much more robust structurally. They've got to be able to ship them. They've got to be able to grab them with a crane. So they're very heavy structures. There are applications where modular is definitely cheaper, and this could still be a good way to go, but it's not necessarily always the cheapest route.
Absolutely. So, some of the data like we've seen from the tier one, the idea of 20% lower cost and such, definitely, as more of those economics come in and we learn about it, there can be some savings there. I think one of the things we wanted to point out was within the rest of the sort of project team and ecosystem, I think Go Next, there really are, in addition, modular and the factory production on certain elements and pieces of the data center can lower the cost. But the other thing that you can think about as you're deploying a data center project or a program of projects, and especially if you're looking at numerous projects and repeatability, is we've done some efficiency studies as you optimize a team on a series of jobs. This represents 6 or 7 data center projects over, say, a 12 to 14-month period, deployed in pods, very consistent design, and there's a few outliers. Sometimes you have some overtime or some other considerations based on schedule, but the basic trend is pretty clear, where you come from say 14 man-hour per kW down to 10, 38% savings, thereabouts, something like that if you did the math.
Right.
So you go through this on M&E side.
And this is deploying a traditional bricks and mortar stick with a consistent team, with a consistent design, with a consistent supply chain. Right. So these things can be achieved. Modular can help bring this down even further. But some of the points that we're trying to get across today is there are these core competencies and sort of factors that we just can't avoid.
Big part of the success of a build or a data center program. Right.
So we've got, every presentation needs to have their pie chart. So we have our pie chart. And everybody's probably pretty familiar with this. But I think the key point here that we want to get across with this is that fully a third of your data center project cost is going to be in capital equipment, and that whether it's going into a module or it's going into a stick-built facility, you're going to spend a third on that equipment. So the opportunities per se to really save with modular are in some of these electrical labor, mechanical labor, but still electrical subcontractors got a lot of commodities to buy. Just as you would on a module, you'd still be buying copper, right? So you still have these commodities that you're going to buy. So there's labor in here that we can get more efficient with working in a factory environment. But it's not going to necessarily lop a third of your cost off of your job just because you've decided to go modular.
Yeah, and I think in a bit we'll show a schedule slide and kind of tie these two things together from. Really has a lot to do with how soon you can complete design, pick up the pencil, and pre-order things too, and then you can realize even more savings.
Right.
And in fact, that kind of leads into that. It really is, can you pick up the pencils? Can you get the early decision-making done on the project in order to take advantage of the modular building? I know from our experience, we've been pretty consistent about the things that we've deployed, and to be able to pre-purchase the equipment early, solidify your design early, and not change it is going to be super key to the success. And then you can wind up paralleling things, save some time, and that's money. So,
Right.
Can you do it? I mean, that is the big point.
So then we get into the schedule aspects of it. And is it always faster? And this is a pretty busy slide, but bear with me here. The traditional construction, I had yet another series of schedule activities for a traditional sort of stick build, and it actually looked very similar to the top line here. You're still going to have a design period. That 30% of the cost is also manifests itself in a large bar for your equipment procurement. So we got to get our design done. We got to get our procurement underway. Now we can add in some modular fabrication into it, and sure, this bar might be able to slide back, but there is some point of time that needs to occur after the final piece of equipment is delivered. So the point that we're trying to make here, a couple, is with this customer commitment here. And this could be an internal customer. This could be, in a case of Digital Realty, someone signing a lease. This is when you get your funding approved. And typically, this is what we see happening, right? Nobody's really going out there and pre-purchasing a lot of equipment and modules. And that's kind of the timeline you get out of that. Now, where we can really save a lot of time here is if we, prior to this customer commitment, commission someone to do some design, go out and procure all of our capital equipment, get it to a fabricator, then we just have to do a little bit of site fit design.
Yeah, kind of call that localization.
Right,
Yep.
right. And our construction period's cut down a little bit here because we've done all our good module work. Yeah. And our commissioning period, I'd say, is about the same. But the fact is, from this point right here, we're talking, a third of the time potentially could be cut out. So modular definitely has some applications. But Steve, if you were to go out and buy, say, 10 megawatts worth of capital equipment for data centers, what would that spend be?
No, we're probably, in the 20s to 30 millions of pre-committed equipment purchases up front prior to us either internally committing as our own customer when we speculatively build or waiting for the customer to come. So, there's kind of a massive commitment there. And what's interesting is, as we look at these different modular solutions and the providers that are out there, and some of them are here in the room, is, I think it'll take time, as some of what Jason has pointed out, where there might be some standardized designs or design approaches that could be accepted by the market, but who's going to go buy 30 million worth of switchgear, UPSs, distribution on spec prior to the customer commitment to be ready to go to obtain that time savings? So I think it's an interesting point, and there might be a few folks that do it.
There's a lot of speculation in there, and going back to the pie chart again, this would probably amount to 40% of your project before you know.
Yeah, especially when you throw in the fabrication.
Right, right. So that's a key point to modular. Yeah, Gary.
So this obviously works for Digital Realty, but it's not going to work with someone who's not building multiple data centers unless someone like Schneider decides to build a modular unit that they're going to sell as a standard spec catalog item.
Exactly, and they do it up front. And so I think maybe the big leap there is, and it'd be interesting to see what some people's take is, there was APC infrastructure, which kind of in the room stuff, but I don't know, is it a 500 kW load block or a 1,000 kW load block? Are people going to start to pre-procure and pre-build those products and then be ready to go when the order comes and then deploy it in 16 weeks?
In 1999, 2000, 2001, when the dot-com was blowing up, right? Everybody was speculating on, what pets.com or I don't know, whatever, all these websites, all this speculation, build, and after everything sort of cratered, right, 2005, this kind of speculation really stopped, and people weren't ordering and buying really until they had someone that was creditworthy signing on the dotted line.
And I think, you know, real estate developers and such, I mean, you're in the business of, you know, taking some risks. So a company like ours will pre-procure and do some of this stuff, and I think that's definitely, you know, the modular can drive some advantages into that. I think for us as sort of AEC community and working with sort of one-off customers, the kind of one-and-done group, or maybe they have a program of 2 or 3 builds, to really take advantage of those different modular products that are out there, whether it's the IT container or the skidding of electrical or what have you, it really does front-end load the decision-making, I think, and they do need to commit to some chunk of capital up front to really gain that benefit. And I think you need to draw on some of those other tools about how you put the team together, sort of, you know, integrated sort of team and project behaviors, and how you buy it out is going to be just as important as the sort of modular tools that you have. It's how you contract for it, how you put that group together, because there's really not a one-stop shop yet. So schedule performance, yeah, definitely. You know, the things to point out are that the entitlements and the upfront work that needs to get done to procure power, to get entitlements in place. You know, at Digital right now, we're seeing even longer cycle times to get the planning approvals and the entitlements, and it's definitely a factor that has to be considered. So it kind of comes back to how do we normalize, you know, these things about cost and schedule performance. We've spent a bit of time already on the repeatability design, and really it doesn't even need to be repeatable. You just need to pick up the pencil if you want to release the stuff and go. Right. And we've talked, you know, about the team and how that can really have an benefit.
That's, I mean, that goes back to, you know, having good design shops, having a good contractor, having good M&E partners, really having a good mastery of your supply chain, right? There's just certain things that whether it's modular or stick built, they're just facts.
Sort of
have to be.
There's a lot that hasn't changed.
Right.
Yeah.
So modular alone is not going to guarantee that your program is successful. All these other sort of fundamentals need to be in place.
Yeah. Reliability. Interesting kind of point. Really, you know, we've seen a lot of in our business with sort of always from the beginning being standardized and repeatable designs. That leads to a level of consistency that's really helped us with our operation team and such. You know, again, I think it's just back to kind of recycling those same points around the design and the consistency across the project. Whether it's stick built or modular, you can definitely, you know, achieve those advantages either way. And I would say as the industry accepts more of these standardized designs, that is going to help, because I think people might start to understand what, you know, this particular package is or this particular approach is.
Right.
And
so,
yeah.
This is my favorite slide, because I think a lot of people believe that just because they're getting something built in a factory, that it's going to be higher quality than something that you can get stick built. And the fact is, without solid production, without solid quality control, without solid design, you're going to end up with something like this, or you could. So it's just not automatic, and that's a big point.
Yeah, and we've seen it even with some of our builds. I mean, as we've done the prepackaged sort of M&E pieces, there's a lot of details and a lot of things to define, and you got to go through a progression, and they get better as you go. You know, the first ones show up and like, oh, I didn't really know you were going to route it this way, or that's too close to this, that, or the other. So it's you definitely have to have some good mentality around the production controls and how it's coming together. And
it's very easy. I was saying to Steve, it's very easy to put a neat BIM model together and go sell something modular. It's entirely another process to have a solid factory that understands quality control, that has people that have done this over and over. It's huge as far as reliability and quality go. So then the efficiency, we would argue that the efficiency is going to be totally dependent or very dependent on location, right?
Huge. And it'll be interesting to see some ID Group's presentation later on PUE. I mean, we've spent so much time lately looking at PUE at Digital and looking at our designs. We've had a couple different designs that we've deployed widely. Now we're looking at alternates on those to gain more efficiency on the projects. And with modular being a big part about what we do, it still comes down to the location. It comes down to the SLA and the ASHRAE window that the customer is willing to accept, and the customer install piece. So it'll be, again, you kind of come back to these claims, and some people will wind up saying, oh, if I do a modular data center, I'll be below 1.2 in some hot, humid climate. And I'm an architect that knows a little bit about mechanical stuff, but I just keep scratching my head and saying, well, if you're not getting outside air in there, or the delta T across the servers and the temperature inside the box is going to be 100, and maybe certain servers can take it, but there's still a raft of legacy equipment and other applications that customers need to support. And I suppose the supporting point would be, maybe obviously with the modular you could wind up with different rooms or environments to take care of the legacy stuff, but just from a blanket statement, this kind of stuff isn't going to go away. I mean, you need to be in a good...
Just to touch on the humidity piece a little bit, that ASHRAE's windows expanding, and the hardware, IT hardware vendors are starting to expand their window as well and say that their equipment will operate in these higher humidity environments. And I would just say that a designer can design it, and the equipment hardware vendors can support it, and you have to really ask yourself, are you prepared to operate inside a hot, humid data center? And there are a lot of issues with humidity that cause corrosion. There's a lot of issues around it that you really need to think twice about how you're going to deal with that if you're just sort of chasing that low PUE, and how that stuff is going to affect how your data center operates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So it's evolving. I mean, we all know there's a number of opportunities out there for all of us to draw on and take advantage of to, either as a customer or to satisfy our end user needs. But there's still a lot that hasn't changed.
Right. Yeah. This is the piece of the puzzle, right? There's again the supply chain, the design, the scheduling and planning, the detailing,
procurement issues,
right?
Yep.
The permitting, the site entitlements. That modular is definitely a piece of all this, and can certainly enhance your design and delivery times.
Yeah,
but
definitely
again,
a part of the success factors that you could pull in, for
it's
sure.
definitely a piece of it. So what we're proposing here is kind of a shift in thinking from modular versus traditional to more of how's modular going to help me with my entire program and achieving my goals. Yeah. And it's not one or the other, but how are we gonna fit that into the piece of the puzzle.
And to keep in mind, throughout the entirety of a project and the program of a project, from the site procurement all the way through to the commissioning, modular will slot in there and offer some advantages, but there's still a number of things and core competencies that you have to have across the team. And we may see in our lifetime some companies integrate and be able to provide that end-to-end piece, but I think we'd all do well to focus on always trying to put together a good high-performing team that has those competencies and those skill sets that can help you out end-to-end on the job. And then the other big thing is just this idea of early procurement and can you finalize design? Can you get that early procurement piece done and make those commitments well ahead of your build program? And I think that's where ultimately you'll get that schedule success.
That's definitely the big dollar issue there is making that commitment. And you can really save a lot if you do that. So thank you very much. Any questions?
We'll start over here since Gary's gone. Yeah, I think, for me as an architect, things have really... Oh, the question was that I mentioned some things about lean design principles or utilizing lean in the design, procurement, and delivery of projects. It's been really interesting in the 7 years that I've been at Digital, because we've kind of designed a process to design, procure, and deliver our data centers, and we're all familiar with sort of standard, schematic design, design development, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I think for us, and that's why you got to be, we have our program, and I think the message to folks is that whether it's a one-off project or a series of projects, you do well to spend a lot of time up front designing how you're going to design, procure, deliver, commission your project. And you don't necessarily need to follow all the traditional steps. So we have something we call our gating process, and that works well for us. And I know I haven't done a lot of hospital work and other things, but these idea of integrated project teams, bringing suppliers in early, you can work contracts to your advantage to have good cost control, but get that expertise earlier. And then as a team, look at how you pull those sequences and those milestones together, and you can rethink that, and it can lead to huge advantages. And I think it's like that cost study. We repeated with the M&E contractors. We only showed the E. But you can take 30% out of a job as you go through a series of repeatable projects as people get familiar with it, or more. And you throw the modular with that, and it can be epically advantageous.
So just to pile on a little bit, that study that we did in Ashburn to show how we were driving more productivity and cost down using the same team included ID Group. Digital Realty, DPR, we had
Power Solutions
and Bowers on the team, and we're all at the table together well before the build cycle was starting. And what we were, I can just remember one of our goals was just really to extract from the designer's head exactly what he wanted to get it right into fabrication. That was our whole goal, was just to go right from what's in your head right to that CNC machine, so that we're minimizing the steps in between. Yeah. And by doing that, we ended up with less duplication of effort. They weren't drawing things that we were going to redraw, right? We were getting BIM models that weren't taken to a level of detail by ID, spending hours and hours and hours, that a detailer was going to redo anyhow. So. Yeah. That was just on the upfront piece. That's how that lean works. And I think it's just a day-to-day.
The way I like to think about it is, and that's why modular is so cool, is we really should think about a project team and a project as a production system. So whether you got the modular piece or not, try and see how you put the team together and think about it as a production system. And you can get some big gains. You throw the modular in, and it's going to get even better. And down the road, being an architect, if I can eliminate shop drawings on a project and just have that continuous flow through, I think that's somewhere where we'd want to be in the next 5 years. Next.
Steve, isn't that more or less the traditional design-build process as opposed to design and build?
It is. I mean, it's funny as some of these new words have been thrown around about lean and IPD, integrated project delivery, et cetera. I mean, I kind of started my career in design build, so I was always like, so what's different about that? There can be contract, structural, shared risk reward contracts and other things, but I think it is true to a design build kind of mentality. I mean, there's a lot of nuance, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's also just I think it's just becoming more collaborative. I think there's been more silos in the past.
Yeah, I think
I think it's just everybody's coming to the table sooner with. Just sort of, here's what I need to get this done. And I just think there's more of a collaborative, open attitude about everybody's got to be successful. Yeah.
And some of the tools like BIM and other things, as long as you target at the right place, you can go a little crazy with it. But that can really get the team to work better together and achieve that. Gary.
Have you noticed a similar curve that you showed on the Ashburn project in the manufacturing of the modules?
Yeah, right now I think our perspective is it's been kind of cost neutral, and that's where, a couple years ago when we got started on this, we've done, I think, 7 rooms now. So, in sort of utility load, it's like 14 mega utility load. It was really a time savings thing, and we're seeing those numbers come down as we order more, and I think that's kind of that big point, with the schedule piece too, that you got to do that early procurement and buy that equipment. I mean, we have probably 12 electrical rooms delivering, 1125 kW to the floor on order right now for various projects. It's a huge capital commitment, and you start to see those savings as the quantities go up. So, absolutely, because you're paralleling the activities for certain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jack.
How do you see commissioning electrical skids that may have a UPS system, switchgear, and even the cooling system for that room may be tied into that skid.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're no longer commissioning, you still got to do the individual systems, but you're looking at commissioning that skid now, and is that happening at the factory as well as on site, or where does the line get?
I mean, for us right now, I think you're up to just individual component tests. Down the road, you know, you could envision if it makes sense to have a 2 meg load bank at the place of fabrication, you know, a generator, and you could, you know, really put it through its test on load. But we've done sort of simple, right, Rich, kind of PLC control tests. You know, obviously all the torquing and, you know, some basics on the individual ones, but we haven't gotten to the point where you could, you know, do a full, even a level 4, you know, individual system test. Haven't gotten to that point yet.
We basically test everything twice. We do it in the factory, and then
Yeah.
and it's really how comfortable is everybody that factory test is indicative of how this system is going to operate after it's been taken apart, put on a truck, and put back together.
Yeah, especially with the truck piece, because that was, you know, kind of the early ones. It's like, well, how's it going to do over the road? You know, we had all these arguments. Well, they ship the UPS on the road and it gets there safe. Now it's just on another, you know, piece of material, and everything's worked out fine. But you do want to kind of double check, you know, as you go through.
Yeah.
Not a question, but a comment, sort of an extension of that, is that one of the interesting things that has been presented to me, although I haven't seen it yet, on the subject of commissioning these things in the factory, is that when you do full comprehensive commissioning, you have an opportunity maybe to do to include environmental conditions as well. So, you know, PUE testing on, like, you know, hot, cold, humid, dry, that kind of thing. When you can simulate environmental environments, and you're not at the mercy of whatever it is, whatever time of year it is when you're doing commissioning.
Yeah, I think that'd be like the size of an airplane hangar or something, right?
Yeah. No, you go rent the sun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that,
Right.
that would be the thing. I mean, I think if it's a data center delivering 1,000 kW, you could probably get, you know, a test done, but you wouldn't be able, it'd be interesting to see if someone can eventually simulate that sort of range of environmental conditions there. I mean, for us right now, the idea maybe would be, oh, should we put a load bank there and, you know, take,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to
put
test it.
two megs on the switchgear at the factory.
hard to test an outside air evap system in wintertime, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no matter where you're at, and if it's 500 kW or 5 megs, it's hard to simulate those outside
Yeah,
air conditions.
definitely.
Anything else?
But maybe we can build a virtual model and run the climate through it that way. I mean, I'm sure someone's figuring that out or has.
Yeah, I've seen those.
You're talking about hanging a load, you also need a power source for that load, so you could be 5 MVA substation sitting there, you
Yeah.
have a whole bunch of generators tied into a parallel.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, it's for all of us, I think this is kind of a progression, right? And it's these incremental steps. And, you know, the things that I've seen, you start off by integrating some equipment on the skids, and then you can start to layer in some other things. You know, can the controls contractor get there and fit that piece out? And, you know, do some certain tests, and you'll see what and I think it's about thinking about what adds value. And there's going to be a number of approaches. No singular approach is right, but you know, in my mind, I think it's probably a hybrid ultimately, because there's still a lot to do with site work and underground and putting a building there. And most owners want a certain level of robustness in the building. And so not every building can be in a place that's free of a lot of natural hazards. I mean, there's some level of wind loads and uplifts and things like that that's always, you know, and seismic and other things that you'll have very efficient hybrid designs where you're putting things on the site and building certain things there, or doing as much, you know, keeping it to an assembly level. And then you have a lot of these modular IT containers or M&E components that can slot in and support it, and sort of my view of the future.
I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. It's for the first time, I think, in, you know, 100 years, the construction industry is really starting to see some better productivity, and by
Yeah.
melding this factory, you know, assembly sort of mentality into what we're building at the site, it's really heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, like you said, the productivity stuff. There's been so much studies done, and there's new ways of working together and other tools available in addition to modular, that we should look at it holistically and take advantage of that. So, anybody else?
Thank you.
Thanks.